Xbox has a 17-year-old patent that everyone forgot about until today, and here's the best part: they just used this patent to expose the biggest lie in PlayStation's argument for the death of physical media, and the timing could not have been better. Honestly, this Xbox announcement is one of the most pro-consumer features I've seen from them in a very long time, but of course there's a catch, right? I mean, what? There's always a catch. Why is there always a catch? So today we'll jump in and dissect everything Xbox just announced, why Xbox just made the right move at exactly the right time, and also why it might already be too late. So for those of you that don't know, Gamescom is currently happening right now in Germany, and Xbox just had a big announcement for day one. Xbox reveals plan to save fans' physical game collections in a digital future, quote, even as technology changes, your library shouldn't. Off to a fantastic start, Xbox. Let's dig in and see what they actually have to say here. As Sony is doubling down on ending physical discs for PlayStation, Xbox has announced that the rumors were true, and it's allowing players to convert physical games into digital ones by redeeming a digital license for physical copies, starting with Xbox Insider members next week on August 31st. That's soon. That is right around the corner. And I love when companies do this, right? They announce something and it's not 2 years away. It's literally right now. It's like, boom, here's what we've been working on. Here you go. It comes out in a couple of days. News of this comes from Microsoft's Gamescom broadcast, where Xbox's Jason Ronald confirmed that Microsoft is taking steps to future-proof physical games as the digital future approaches. As he describes it, once the feature rolls out, your Xbox system will prompt you to redeem a digital license when you put a physical game in your console, and once you do that, you won't have to put the disc in the Xbox to play it anymore unless you want to. This will also allow you to play the game on other platforms as part of the Play Anywhere system, and you can start streaming those games through the cloud. This is an insane announcement, right? This is literally like, this is what game key cards should have been, if you guys understand what I'm trying to say. So basically, you've got an Xbox disc for Xbox One, let's say, and the entire game is on the disc. You now put that disc in your Xbox, it verifies the license of that physical copy, grants you an equivalent digital license, and then installs the game to your drive, which it was already going to do anyway, and then you can put the game back on your shelf and know that you own the full game, whether servers go down or they try to revoke digital purchases or whatever the case might be. So that way in 10, 15, 30 years you can still dust off the old Xbox One and, okay, well, the digital server is no longer available, but you still have that physical copy with the data on the disc, and so you just pop that in the drive and you're good to go. You can still play the game. This is the best of both worlds, and Xbox is not only proving that this technology is possible, but it exists, and they've already figured it out. And this is where the patent from 2009, 17 years ago, comes into play, and we're going to dive deep into that in just a moment. Now, really quick, this video is not sponsored. I just wanted to take a moment to thank everybody who's been liking the videos and using the hype feature and just overall engaging with and sharing my content lately. It's really helped out the channel a ton, so thank you. But first, let's finish what Xbox has to say about this reveal. Quote, for 25 years, players have invested in Xbox, and the players have really been what has made Xbox special, he says. So we're really focused on how do we honor that as we think about the next 25 years of Xbox. We just really view this as another step in making sure that your library is protected. It can move with you as technologies and formats change, and we're going to continue to invest in game preservation and adding new capabilities just to make sure that your library continues to get better just as technology evolves. Now, there's a lot of really big things in that statement that we have to dissect in this video. Okay, first of all, protecting your libraries as technologies and formats change. That is sort of foreshadowing for the Xbox Helix and what is probably coming down the pipeline. We'll talk about that in a second. And then furthermore, they are just coming out and saying that they are interested in game preservation, and not just preservation, but creating new technologies and new features and new functions to make sure that your library is preserved. And the contrast between Xbox's stance on this and that of Sony and PlayStation on the exact same stance within like the same exact month, by the way, is absolutely astounding, right? I mean, this is the correct stance to have as a company who values 25 years of business from your customers. Meanwhile, we'll review Sony's stance in just a minute, but their entire argument is basically like, look, only 20% of our profits come from physical, so you if you like physical. That's literally, like, I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically their entire stance. They're like, well, we can maximize profits if we just go all digital, so we're just gonna do that. Literally no concern for the physical customer. They don't care about them at all, and in fact they don't see them as valuable in the slightest, right? Otherwise they wouldn't be throwing them in the garbage in 2028, and that is the biggest lie that Xbox is exposing here. But first, let's see what Asha Sharma has to say, the new CEO of Xbox. She actually posted over on X, aka Twitter. I hate that people want me to call it X because it is quite literally the worst rebrand in all of modern business history, okay? But anyway, their physical game library is more than a collection of discs. It holds years of memories and stories worth preserving. Starting next week, Xbox insiders can unlock a digital entitlement for supported physical games. We'll start with thousands of titles and add more as we can. So this is a huge announcement because, like I said, not only are they coming out and saying, hey, we've developed this technology, it's coming immediately, right? You don't have to wait 6 months for this. It's happening now, and it already supports thousands of games. That's insane, right? I mean, if this came out and it was like, okay, it supports the top 200 bestsellers, then it's like, okay, like that's fine, but it doesn't really move the needle, right? Asha Sharma is coming out and saying this is starting with thousands of titles and we are not done. We love to see that, okay? Now, I'm talking very highly of Xbox in this video because this is objectively the correct position to have. They're doing the right thing, and it's important that for me, I mean, if you look at the channel, we cover a lot of negative news here, okay? Particularly because those are the most interesting stories lately, but also it's only fair that when these companies do the right thing, we have to give them credit for it. Otherwise, they're not going to listen to what the consumer is asking for, right? So I'm talking very highly of Xbox in this video, but I will say that this solution, right, it's presented as a solution. It's not actually perfect. In fact, there are some pretty big problems with this solution that we will talk about in the video. So I don't want you guys to think like, oh, he's just going to be glazing Xbox this whole time. No, there are actually some very legitimate concerns about this, but the article concludes here saying, unlike PlayStation, it sounds like Microsoft is at least offering some means to make sure your collection doesn't become completely obsolete if a future Xbox system doesn't have a disk drive. Sony, meanwhile, kind of just said sorry not sorry and confirmed that PlayStation games launching in 2028 and beyond will no longer be manufactured on disk. If nothing else, Sony coming out with this incredibly unpopular news gave Microsoft a chance to come out looking good by comparison, which I'm sure the company is thrilled about considering it's had its own share of controversies lately after mass layoffs across Xbox studios earlier this year. And that's what I said before, right? Like, if we're going to tear into these companies when they do horrible things, we also have to praise them when they do the right thing, okay? So with that being said, let's quickly review what Sony and PlayStation's official stance was when they finally broke their silence surrounding the end of physical discs. In a recent Q&A session after a quarterly report released from Sony, their chief financial officer Lin Tao has addressed the situation surrounding physical games being discontinued, and she said specifically, now this is a translation, right, but this is verbatim, quote, "And so when we think about the future, we put a lot of thought and time, and we cautiously considered this, and we came to this conclusion, and we're going to cautiously move this forward." She also acknowledged the backlash to the decision on social media for the first time, stating that while Sony was aware of players' reaction to the news, its focus was on how to keep them interested in PlayStation games when it goes all digital. And then she went on to say that people were just having an emotional reaction to video games, and of course that's her position because she's just one of the suits that runs the company. She doesn't actually give a fuck about gaming, let's be honest. But anyway, this was Sony's only acknowledgement of the backlash to their unpopular decision, and the casual onlooker saw this as Sony basically just taking the audience that they have that likes physical games and is just throwing them in the garbage, right? Based on Sony's own financial reports, about 18% of their sales are physical games, but that also factors in games that only release digitally, right? So the digital number is artificially inflated by that reality, and it also excludes the entirety of the secondhand market, eBay, Facebook Facebook Marketplace mom and pop game stores that don't report their numbers when it comes to physical games sold every year, right? So we know that PlayStation's audience that buys physical games is at least 20 to 25% of their audience. It could be much more, we just don't have the data to prove it, but at the very least it's 20 to 25%. Okay, so either 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 PlayStation customers buys physical games for their console. They like the option of physical media. Okay, and PlayStation is looking at those customers and ignoring their feedback, just straight up ignoring it, right? Remember, this response from their chief financial officer was directed to a shareholder, not to a paying customer, not to a gamer, to a shareholder, right? So to this day they have ignored the customer. We are at the end of August 27th. They've completely ignored their customers, not a single response to the customer, the paying consumer, only to the shareholders one time. And the message that that sends to their players is that if you are one of those 1 in 5, you are disposable. You are not a customer that we want to continue having. You are not worth anything to us, which is why we're throwing you in the garbage, right? That is the messaging from the way that Sony has handled this. They have done everything but say that verbatim. And so when you take that messaging and you compare it to what Xbox just said, the contrast there hits like a truck. You have the CEO coming out and saying like, look, your physical library, it's more than just discs. It holds years of memories and stories worth preserving. You have Jason Ronald over at Xbox saying that for 25 years the players have invested in Xbox and they want to honor that business and honor that commitment. I mean, again, the contrast in the messaging here couldn't be more clear. Sony and PlayStation are like cartoonishly evil in this situation. Like, it's hard to imagine a worse way to communicate with your paying customers around a controversial topic that they genuinely have concerns with. In my previous video, I actually talked about how they are literally blacklisting journalists over in India surrounding this physical disc situation. If you missed that video, check it out on the channel. But literally PlayStation India just came out and just started blacklisting journalists for saying negative things about the physical media situation. So now they're just censoring journalists, right, who have very valid concerns, just like the paying customers do. And that's why the timing of this announcement from Xbox is so critical, right? Sony has shot themselves in the foot at this point 2 or 3 times, and then Xbox comes along and just curb stomps them while they're down, because it's like, you idiot, you absolute idiot. Whoever's in charge of the messaging surrounding this needs to be fired over at PlayStation. Like, objectively, they just handed this PR victory to Xbox on a silver platter. It was a layup for them, and I'm glad they took it. They need these victories, really, and I'm happy to give them the victory when it's something that is pro-consumer. Now, it's not perfect. We'll talk about that in this video. Okay, it's not perfect, but it is significantly better than whatever PlayStation is doing over there. But here's a couple of questions you might be asking yourself. One, how is it even possible that Xbox can do this, right? I mean, couldn't somebody just put a disc in their console, get the digital license, download it to the hard drive, and then disconnect it from the internet, and then sell the game? And then now there's multiple copies of the game out there from a single disc, right? And then 2, couldn't PlayStation just literally copy this idea, right? Like, couldn't they just say, hey, that's a great idea, and then steal it? The answer is probably not, actually. And that's one of the most beautiful things about this announcement from Xbox, is that when we look at this patent from 2009, 17 years ago, and we look at how Xbox One and Xbox Series game discs were manufactured, and then we compare it to the technology of the PS4 and PS5 game discs, it literally might not be technically possible for Sony and PlayStation to fight back here. Like, it may literally be a genuine limitation of how Sony and PlayStation have manufactured their discs for these consoles, which gives Xbox a massive advantage here. And it all stems back to that 2009 patent. So let's jump right in and take a look at this patent that I've been referring to all video. This came out March 3rd, 2009, bro. Woo! I was in 9th grade playing World at War Zombies with the boys. Okay, 2009, fantastic year. But anyway, the title here says full rights local playback of digital content. Digital content items such as audio, video, images, games, and the like are often stored on removable data holding media, such as compact discs, DVDs, or game discs. In such a case, digital content items can then be played from the disc via a computing device, including a disk drive configured to read the disc. When a disc is rendered unplayable, for example, due to scratches, damage, or loss, it is advantageous to have a copy of the digital content item on a local data holding medium, such as a hard drive of a computing system. system. Okay, totally reasonable. I think everybody agrees with that, right? In fact, that's a big reason why so many people are fans of ROMs and having digital backups of the games that you have in case you can't play them anymore for whatever reason. So okay, that's the philosophy and logic behind the patent. Let's see what the patent actually says or does. The present disclosure is directed to playing digital content from a local data holding medium such as a hard drive, where the digital content item has been downloaded to the local data holding medium from a removable data holding medium such as a disk, and the presence of the removable data holding medium is not necessary for playing the digital content item from the local data holding medium. But let's dig a little bit deeper because this is an extremely long document. Okay, I'm not going to read through everything. Oftentimes digital content may be protected by digital rights management, which provides restrictions and or policies regarding the use of the digital content item. Upon downloading the game to the hard drive, a user may need to first obtain a license from a licensing server associated with the game before the user is allowed to play the game from the hard drive. A computing system may be configured such that they can make a game play from the hard drive or other local data holding medium, contingent on the existence of a valid license that grants the rights for such play. Let's jump to the good part all the way at the bottom, which is what separates the Xbox and PlayStation in this situation. Claim number 12 talks about a game playing device in which a data holding subsystem has instructions executable by logic to download the game, okay, send a license request, include the user ID with that request, a device ID identifying the game playing device, a game ID identifying the game, a version ID, and this is the big part, a unique disk ID identifying the game disk, each game disk having a unique disk ID different from other unique disk IDs of other game disks. So in other words, if you have two copies of the exact same game, Xbox was trying to figure out all the way back in 2009 how it can differentiate between this disc and this disc. And I understand that these are PlayStation discs. Okay, I don't have two copies of an identical Xbox game, and don't ask me why I have two copies of the worst Call of Duty ever manufactured. I don't remember. It's quite unfortunate. Okay, but either way, those unique disc IDs are key to how this entire system probably works that Xbox just announced. And I say probably because technically they don't actually tell us, but if we scroll down here to the official announcement on Xbox's website, what they say is most Xbox One and Xbox Series X disc-based games support this new feature. So they're making a distinction here. This new system is currently in place only, I guess, for Xbox One and Xbox Series X games. Let's look back at this patent that we talked about. It came out in 2009, which means they were working on the Xbox One at that time. The 360 was already out. The Xbox One didn't come out until 2013. So this is an Xbox One era patent. And now we see that, of course, it only works for Xbox One and Xbox Series X, which means it is most likely the case that if the patent came from the Xbox One era and this only works as far back as Xbox One, they almost certainly did in fact use that patent and implement unique disk identifiers all the way back on the Xbox One and continued that through the Xbox Series X. And this is where the difference between Xbox and PlayStation could be devastating for Sony, because as far as we know, the PS4 and the PS5 game discs don't actually have unique identifiers per disc. Now, I'm not saying they don't, but I'm saying that there's no evidence to suggest that, right? We've got the patent from Xbox. They actually developed the technology, and we see that it is limited to those consoles. In other words, this doesn't work for Xbox 360 games or original Xbox games, right? The implication there being those games don't have the unique disc identifier. And so we don't have any evidence that PlayStation or Sony have a disc identifier themselves, right? We don't know if they've ever thought this far ahead. And honestly, it might be the case that Xbox never even thought that this would be the use case for the unique disc IDs, but it's just a convenient situation where they're like, oh, well, thank God we implemented disc identifiers all the way back in the day, because now we can use that to build this system that will convert them into digital counterparts. And so it's almost poetic in a way where the Xbox One was a massive disaster for Microsoft, right? But this piece of tech, this little patent that came out of that era, is helping them kick Sony while they're down now in a way that Sony might not even be able to fight back with, because who knows if they even have the same identifiers that Xbox does for their previous consoles. But like I said, this solution here is not perfect, right? Because again, this only works for Xbox One and Xbox Series X. So I don't want to be sort of a, know, beggars can't be choosers type of guy. So I appreciate this genuinely, right? I'm very happy about this announcement, but this does nothing to protect the original Xbox games or Xbox 360 games. And how are we going to play those on future consoles if we can't use this feature with them? And the reason I say that is because the other headline that broke yesterday was Xbox boss Asha Sharma won't confirm whether Project Helix has a disk drive. For those of you that don't know, the next generation of Xbox console has been being called Project Helix. Quote, we have to be thinking about efficiency and affordability. I know players love physical media, and I know there's a lot of benefits in digital media. Xbox boss Asha Sharma won't say for sure one way or another whether the next gen console will have a disk drive, but as she emphasizes the need to make the box affordable, it doesn't take much reading between the lines to think we're looking at another all digital console. When asked about whether Helix would have a disk drive, Sharma did not give a definitive answer. Quote, this next generation, we have to be thinking about efficiency and affordability alongside performance, she responded. Certainly affordability is the biggest concern around next gen gaming machines right now, and given the tech pricing apocalypse that the rapidly expanding AI bubble, one Microsoft itself has a lot of responsibility in inflating, has brought us, fears of $1,000 consoles are not unfounded. They're going to be, okay? If you guys don't know, if somebody hasn't broke the bad news to you yet, okay, the PlayStation 6 and Xbox Helix will be $1,000 if we're lucky out the gate. If we're lucky, if the stars align, they're only going to be 1,000. They're probably going to push towards 1,100, 1,200 or more. I'm sorry to be the person to tell you that information, but that is the truth. The article goes on to say disk drives do add a not insignificant amount to a console's manufacturing cost for a feature not every player uses, hence why even the PlayStation Pro offers disk drives only as an optional add-on. Quote, all of the industry needs to start to innovate on affordability and efficiency. That is something that we have not had to do previously, Sharma says, but with the crisis that's currently happening in hardware and components, it is absolutely something all of us need to be thinking about and innovating on, and giving people more choice in terms of how they play their console and how they purchase their console. And so again, if she's sitting there and not answering the question, will it have a disk drive? The answer is it's not going to have a disk drive. And why can we confidently arrive at that conclusion? Well, clearly the timing of this announcement of your discs going digital was timed perfectly. It was a shot at Sony, it was a shot at PlayStation, and frankly, it was aimed for the vitals, okay? And the only thing that would have made this announcement even more powerful is if Asha Sharma came out and said, yes, not only are we helping you preserve your existing collection, but you're gonna be able to use it on the next console as well. People would have lost their minds if she said, yes, the next console has a disk drive. I mean, it would have been, again, another very easy slam dunk for her, a PR grand slam, right? Like, it would have absolutely been the correct thing to say if it was true, and it's not true. Like, there's no logical reason why she wouldn't commit to that disk drive being in the console at this point in time unless it wasn't going to have one, right? And that's also, I mean, you can kind of look at it as another way. She knows it's not going to have a disk drive, and so before they announce the Helix and reveal it, they had to develop a way to make sure that it was backwards compatible with all of your discs, right? Which is more than PlayStation is doing. It's more than Sony is doing, right? And so I don't want to sit here and bash them for this because it's frankly better than the competition, but it's not a perfect solution, right? It only works for Xbox One and Xbox Series X, and the next gen console is still not going to have a disk drive, right? And so the only way to make your entire library backwards compatible is to have them implement this sort of technology, and so they kind of did it for that reason as well. Now, the best solution for the future of physical media, in my opinion, is ironically for them to just copy what Nintendo is doing, except throw game key cards in the garbage, right? And by that I mean physical media doesn't have to be on a disc. I feel like I need to hold people's hand when I say this, okay? Cartridges have existed since the 80s. Cartridges have been in many ways a superior way to hold this media. Do you understand? So you look at all of the Game Boys, you look at all of the DSs, you look at the 3DS, the Switch and the Switch 2, they all use cartridges. And there's many advantages to that, one of which being the storage size of the cartridge is not capped, or at least the cap is so high it won't matter for video games, okay? So the argument of, oh, the new Call of Duty, it's not gonna fit on a disc and whatever, even though we can literally just put it on 2 discs, like that's been industry standard practice for like 30 years since the PlayStation 1, okay? People have lost their damn mind. They completely forgot the reality we live in. But either way, by using cartridges, you just throw that argument in the garbage. It's like, okay, nope, it's a cartridge. Actually, it's a 256 gigabyte cartridge. Actually, it's a 512 gigabyte cartridge. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's the beauty of cartridges, right? right? And so they could literally just manufacture a proprietary cartridge that would fit the full game on the cartridge, and that would be objectively the best solution moving forward. The only downside to that is that right now storage is extremely expensive. But look, I'm the consumer. That's not my problem. That's a problem for them to figure out. And frankly, we don't need new consoles right now. Okay, so literally just delay them for 2-3 years. Literally just delay it. Just push it. Wait until the AI bubble pops. Wait until components become dirt cheap again. That will happen. Okay, I'm old enough to know that that will happen. That happens every time with bubbles. They're going to be able to buy removable storage for pennies on the dollar compared to what it is right now. And at that time, that's when you introduce this proprietary storage medium. You introduce your new consoles, you save physical media, everybody wins. Okay, that would be the correct way forward. And then you have an external drive for discs for backwards compatibility, or you do something like this, and then GG. That's it. That's the future. So again, Xbox's solution here isn't perfect, but it's still light years ahead of whatever Sony and PlayStation are doing. It's so much better messaging than what they're doing that frankly they should be embarrassed. And honestly, whoever is responsible for handling the end of physical discs over at PlayStation and the messaging surrounding it, they should genuinely be fired. And I don't say that lightly. The gaming industry right now is in a situation where so many people are losing their job. It's actually so sad. But in this specific case, when you're so bad at your job, you have to lose it. I mean, frankly, like, what are we talking about? It is the responsibility of the company. If you're not going to listen to the damn consumer, you have a fiduciary responsibility to listen to the shareholders, and they should be furious about how badly they're fumbling the messaging here and literally just shooting themselves in the foot, allowing Xbox to come in, steal their thunder, curb stomp them, and everyone cheers it on, right? Someone should be fired at Sony. At least one, bro. At least one, if not a team. But anyway, the final question I want to leave you with here, and this is, I saved this for the end of the video, is this too late? Is it too late, folks? Now, the reason that Xbox announced this right now is for a couple of reasons. One, I think they were already developing this for the Project Helix not having a disk drive, right? I think that was always going to be their plan. But the reason that they unveiled it right now is because the timing is perfect. They can kick Sony while they're down and score an easy PRW. The timing makes a lot of sense. But the question of is it too late surrounds whether or not Xbox can even move the needle with an announcement like this, right? And by that I mean Microsoft and Xbox have lost the last 2 generations of console. They lost the current generation by a mile, and they lost to the PS4 last generation. It's been over a decade of losing at this point for Microsoft, and this pro-consumer strategy they're going with now is a little bit late, right? Because I mean, if you want to preserve your library, it sort of assumes that you have an Xbox library to begin with. And lots of people over the last 10 years, before Sony went full demon mode, before they went mask off cartoonish villain, right? A complete embarrassing laughing stock of the gaming community, before they made that flip and went full suits, full business mode, the consumer, people bought a PS4, people bought a PS5, and people like myself who are currently participating in the PS blackout, who have their PlayStation 5, you probably can't see it, it's off in the corner, but it's unplugged for day 5 now, or whatever it is. People like myself who've bought PlayStation games for years now because they were just the better console. I don't know how to say it. PS4 was better than Xbox One. PS5 was better than Xbox Series X. It just is what it is. I don't make the rules. They're just better. Okay, everyone knows it. That's why they sold so much better. But I've got a whole catalog of PlayStation discs, right? And so when you announce a sort of strategy to support physical media moving forward, you know, you're supporting the existing customers of Xbox, which is great, but so many people over the last decade have already left, right? We don't have Xbox One games to take advantage of this new feature, so it's not really a sell for us. Do you understand? So with Project Helix, you know, even if we want to support that and we want to jump the Sony ship and we want to go over to Microsoft for the next generation, which I am almost certainly going to do, frankly, this is not going to benefit me, right? And so it's a little bit too late here. And also, let's say that Microsoft does want to appeal to the physical media community because there's value there, which is a conclusion that Sony incorrectly arrived at, right? Like, they're literally just objectively wrong. They looked at the physical digital split and said it's in our best interest, the company's best interest, to go all digital, and they said the other 20-25%, right? They were wrong for that objectively, and Microsoft acknowledges that here and is calling their bluff, is pointing out their lie. They're saying, look, you didn't have to go all digital. There's still value in these consumers. What percentage of those angry PlayStation consumers are actually going to switch over to Xbox? Like, they're not going to win the next generation off of this alone, obviously, because ultimately digital is still the most popular format, so a lot of people really don't care. So Microsoft finally figured out the assignment, but it might be years too late, so we'll have to wait and see. Now, what does winning look like for Microsoft, right? Well, at this point, I think a realistic victory for them is to just close the gap, right? I mean, they have been getting destroyed by PlayStation over the last 10 years, so if they can just convert 5% or 10% of whoever was going to buy a PS6, now they get a Project Helix, if they can make that big of a conversion off of just this one reveal, then I think for them that is a massive win, right? I mean, we're talking about hundreds of thousands, if not a million or two customers, paying customers that will now commit to the Microsoft ecosystem instead of the PlayStation ecosystem. I may be one of those customers depending on how the rest of the rollout goes for these two upcoming consoles, but that's probably what Microsoft is looking for as a win here. They're not going to be able to beat PlayStation for the next generation, most likely, okay? But if they can just convert 5 or 10% off this one announcement alone, I think they're going to consider that a win, which is nice. It's great to see that. I'm glad they are supporting physical media in some capacity. It's just such a shame that they arrived at this conclusion so late and that they're not probably going to have a disc drive in the next console or any form of physical media, unfortunately, for that next console. It's just it's sad to see that they could have turned this thing around if they weren't so late with this. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're not too late. Okay, maybe they're not too late. Maybe this is just step one for them absolutely making the biggest comeback that we've seen in gaming history, but only time will tell. And if they do, of course, I will be making a video about it. And if you don't want to miss that video, make sure you subscribe down below. You might think you're subscribed because you've seen a ton of my videos, but you're actually not. And of course, if you made it to the end of this video, consider dropping a thumbs up down below. It really helps out the channel a ton.